So this will, I guess, be my first reaction video I've ever done. Somebody sent me this video from Ray Comfort and the folks at Living Waters, and they were talking about these productivity gurus. This is my first time watching it, and I will just maybe pause it as we go and give my impressions about Ray's take on productivity that's out there in the world.
Have you guys heard of Norman Vincent Peale?
Oh, yes.
Yes. He wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking.
Has sold more than 15 million copies.
He was the father of the positive thinking, name it, claim it.
You were the first to preach the value of positive thinking, but there have been many who've come after you.
I am strong.
I am healthy.
I am healthy.
I am confident.
Garbage.
It's your attitude toward the fact that determines what happens in relation to the fact.
Leonard Ravenhill said something that's amazing about Norman Vincent Peale. I find the Apostle Paul appealing and Peale appalling.
That's the whole positive confession thing. And man, I hear that stuff and it just makes my blood boil, especially when it's something that is intermingled with the gospel. It's been picked up by word of faith.
Yeah, I think they're spot on this. A lot of secular and even sort of pseudo-Christian advice on productivity, self-development appeals to that Norman Vincent Peale name it and claim it stuff, the positive affirmation. Often when you dig into this stuff, you'll hear people talk about manifesting, which you can trace back to Peale, and even sort of the this idea that if I say something is true, if I think about it hard enough, I will get it. Even some of this stuff about people make like a vision for their life or like a vision board, and they'll say just making that vision will sort of cause the universe to work in my favor to make these things happen for me. That's obviously not true. It's okay to have an idea of where you want to go, to make plans and have them open to the Lord, but this idea of manifesting, it can really be interwoven with the self-development movement, and that is something that rightly should be criticized and weeded out, and we want to be a mark and avoid that.
What I'd love for us to do is talk about some of the worldly philosophies that we see springing up from these sorts of books.
Follow your heart really is a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true.
Follow your heart. This is when grandma and grandpa are writing the graduation card for you with their gift. You know,
You're beautiful inside and out. Your heart is beautiful.
Quoted Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? But a lot of people, especially young people, I just followed my heart.
Yeah, if somebody...
This part, I mean, obviously I agree with them. Follow your heart is bad advice. I don't, at least in the genre of productivity stuff I read, I don't really come across this that much. So I don't know what self-development stuff is teaching follow your heart. I guess maybe some of the more woo-woo stuff is. I tend to veer towards like the business type productivity, managing your time type things, which have their own set of problems. Maybe they'll get into that next. But this part, I don't completely understand where they're getting this from, that this is coming up in self-development books, but maybe that's just, I don't read those kinds.
One of the more recent ones that I read that I thought was actually really practical was Atomic Habits, New York Times bestselling guy. As I was thinking through it though, I thought to myself, man, there's all these guys. There's the Jordan Peterson, James Clears that are put.
Now, I think this is the relevant part that caused someone to send this to me, because these are like the popular books that really fall into this sort of productivity, self-development genre and are really popular right now. And I do have concerns with the philosophy that they advance, that it is unchristian, and often we absorb it undiscerningly. So I'm interested in what they're going to say about these books, because it's a little bit different than the Norman Vincent Peale kind of self-help type stuff. It tends to be more practical, but it still has some bad philosophy baked into it. And I think it's not as easy to catch as some of the other stuff they said, like the love yourself, all of that. I think any like reasonably mature Christian is going to hopefully catch on to that stuff. But this stuff is a little bit more pernicious in my experience, and is one of the reasons probably the main reason I started Redeeming Productivity, is to address these philosophies that are a bit sneakier. Let's see what they say about this.
Putting together these things that are practical tools, but what's missing is at the end of the day, they're ultimately just more rules that we're going to ultimately fail at doing. And that's the clear and distinct difference.
Yeah, I think that's a great criticism, is you set out to try to improve your life with these books, and they give you a lot of hope because you're like, oh, look what Goggins did, or oh, look what Jocko did, or look what Jordan Peterson says if I just do this, and you kind of see that if I follow that plan, it's going to work. But you can't, like you keep failing and failing and failing and failing, and by giving people this hope that more law, more rules is going to be what solves their problem, there is, from a salvation standpoint, obviously no salvation in that. We need the gospel of Jesus Christ. We need grace is where we need to start from. So I think that's a fair criticism. Let's see if they go further.
And that's the clear and distinct difference between the gospel and what could be helpful self-help books, is that self-help books, you are the hero of your own story.
That's well put.
If you do this, you will have the life you want. You're at the center of it. But the gospel tells us, I am the problem, and I am not the hero of my story.
Right.
Christ is the hero. I am not a machine that just needs to be retooled. I am an organic, living, fallen creature that needs to be redeemed.
Yeah, that's right on. That's so well said. The problem isn't that I haven't tweaked this area, that area. The problem is I need to be reborn. So I think that's a spot on criticism and a spot on warning that needs to be given to people who think that these books are going to solve their problems. They're not going to solve your problems. They might improve certain areas, but if you still walk away with that philosophy of it's all about me, it's about my glory, right? My success, my financial stability, my getting in good shape and how I feel about myself, you've totally missed the point. You might genuinely improve your life in those areas, but the core problem is you're doing it all for yourself instead of for the glory of God, which is right? That's the first starting point when we try to think about these things through a biblical lens is I'm not at the center. It's not about me.
Self-help books, use them with discretion, but turn to Christ for transformation.
Yeah, so it's not about improving ourselves. It's about denying ourselves, right? We don't need self-help. We need a savior.
Even a lot of Christian self-help books, like this is a quote-unquote Christian book, but it's a crossless book.
Christ is who we need. You can be the most practical user of time and your talents, but if Christ isn't at the center, well, then you're just losing the mark.
If you think about the way that they're critiquing this, they're critiquing self-help books from the standpoint of people are looking to them for salvation. This is going to solve my problems instead of looking to Christ. That's completely right. And I think people do that, and that's not the right way to view it. I think my tact and the way I address this is I'm looking at the other side of it. I'm looking at, okay, someone has found their salvation in Jesus Christ. They recognize that it's His Spirit working in them to transform their affections, their heart, and they're wanting to seek to live a God-glorifying life. How do we then practically take the truths of Scripture to apply them so that we're growing spiritually, but then pair that with, not that it replaces or anything, but pair that with what are the practical things I can do so I manage my time such that I'm living faithfully, not to save myself, but so that I can bear more fruit for God. So that, for example, I recognize that to grow, I need to be in the Word daily. Okay, that's a practical matter. I understand that Christ is the one causing the change in me through exposure to His Word, through prayer. But practically, how do I manage a schedule so that I can do that well? And that's where I think even secular books on this stuff can be helpful. They do have tips about, oh yeah, here's a good way to manage your time. And so if you're looking for it to sort of augment, to sort of supplement, to sort of add to, here's some practical things I can do to grow in faithfulness, that can be helpful from that degree if you're discerning through the philosophy that they're throwing in there too. But which I think the point that they're addressing here is if you're looking at these books to sort of be your salvation, to be your hope, you're missing it. It starts with Jesus Christ, ends with Jesus Christ. That is where you need to look.
What about self-help sermons?
Oh, even worse. No, you're right. A lot of preaching today is basically that. Motivational speaker, self-help talk.
That sort of preaching appeals to the carnal nature, uncrucified nature. False convert would latch on to the prodigal going back to the father to get more money.
Wow.
Rather than make me a servant, God becomes your servant.
I'm with them there. A lot of the self-help type preaching is exactly that. It's the same thing as a TED Talk. It's the same thing as you're going to get from one of these secular productivity gurus. They've just kind of sprinkled some Jesus on top on some verses and often twisting them. The difference is, what is your foundation and what is your objective? Your foundation is the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm saved not by works. I'm saved not by self-improvement. I'm saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in the cross of Christ alone. If I have that foundation, then this other part of trying to live faithfully as a Christian, where we can go wrong in the church and as individual believers, is when we don't see that the end goal is maximally glorifying God with our lives. Okay, it says in Titus 2:14 that Christ redeemed for himself a people zealous for good works. That's the objective. I want to be zealous for good works, not that they save me, but that they glorify God. And it's not about me. And so self-improvement, if you want to call it that, for the Christian is me seeking to grow in fruit bearing for the Lord for the sake of his glory. And I'm going to use tools if I can. I'm going to use software. I'm going to use apps. I'm going to use tips about routines and goals and all of that to help me in that mission, understanding all the while that it still is Christ who's working in me both to will and to work for his good pleasure. It's not me. It's not self-improvement. I'm not the one doing the work. I'm taking hold of the means of grace and the Spirit who's empowering me to do these things and utilizing practical methods to actually put that into work. So I think the criticism is right on. It's a little bit, they're a little bit more in an area of this that I don't address as much. They're sort of using this as an evangelistic tool because they're an evangelistic ministry. And I kind of look more at the other side of it of, okay, you're a faithful Christian, you're wanting to grow in faithfulness. How do you take hold of the means the Lord's given you and take hold of practical means to effectuate change in your life that is, obviously wrought by Christ, but he uses the means of you creating a schedule, you setting a goal, you developing habits. I think that's the difference, but points well taken here and appreciate them addressing this. Let me know if you'd like me to do more of these types of videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.